Please take a moment to listen to this disclosure from the Common Ground podcast. The Common Ground podcast is dedicated to exploring commonality among individuals with diverse perspectives. Our guests may present unique worldviews related to health, psychology, and overall well-being. Please note that the Common Ground podcast does not directly promote or endorse any specific ideas, concepts, or actions discussed during our episodes. Listeners are encouraged to approach the information shared with discernment and to consult with their mental and/or physical health providers before making any changes to their health or wellness practices. The views expressed by guests and hosts are their own and do not directly reflect the opinions of the Common Ground podcast. Your well-being is important, and we advocate for informed decision-making. Thanks for listening.
Recognize how you grieve. Recognize what things make you safe in your grief process.
With your partner or in a significant grieving period in life, how can we effectively communicate that with the people that we love the most?
One of them identifies with the anger. The other one actually just feels it as an emotion and takes control back. Now in grief, that's the same thing I'll share. There's a lot of times in grief you feel stuck. She has not dealt with grief, so conflict is her way of taking control and trying to control her environment with other people. And it creates massive conflict in her life.
Of what we did and what we threw and what we've accomplished. We look at them in the negative side instead of looking at them in the positive side.
A lot of times that outburst, sadly, is who we were as a kid.
Welcome to the Common Ground podcast, where stories connect, perspectives collide, and purpose is found in the middle.
Every week, we sit down with unique and inspiring guests that come from all walks of life. People who challenge the status quo, overcome the odds, and live with intentionality.
Whether you're driving to work, on your morning walk, or just looking for that spark to ignite your week, you're in the right place.
Welcome to the Common Ground podcast with your hosts, John Fletcher and Sydney Kurt.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Common Ground podcast. I am your host, John, and with me, I have my partner in crime, Sydney. And today we have a special guest, Chris Mamone, on with us. It's going to be an awesome episode. I can't wait to do this and get this going. But before we start our podcast, you know, I always have to have the joke of the day for us. You know, we want to start with a little laughter. So, what do you call an old snowman?
Tell us, John.
What?
A glass of water.
Depends on where you get the snow from.
Yes.
Yes. I thought because of all the heat and it being summertime, a melting joke was appropriate. And thank you guys for laughing like it's the first time you ever heard it.
We're here for your dad jokes. We love them.
I'm here for you, buddy. I got you.
So, like I said, today we have a special guest with Chris with us. I want to tell you a little bit about Chris. In 2017, he received his master's in business administration. In 2024, he was certified in life coaching and transformational life coaching. Chris is an acceptance coach where he helps individuals navigate grief and overcome trauma so that they can reconnect with their self-worth, reclaim their personal power, and create a life that honors their journey. And I love that, the life that honors the journey. Chris is also the founder of the Empowered Grief Journey podcast, and he is a husband and a father. It is my pleasure. It is my awesome pleasure to introduce my friend, who I've really enjoyed getting to know and start building a relationship with. Here is Chris.
Well, hey guys, thanks for having me on the podcast today, John and Sydney. It's been a real pleasure to meet both of you guys over the last couple of weeks as we met on pre-interviews. You both have beautiful stories, by the way, so I appreciate you sharing a little bit of your background with me before we jumped on the recording today. And thank you for that introduction of things. So for listeners, my name is Chris Mamone, and I'm an acceptance coach. And what I do is I help people turn their pain into power and learn how to use grief as their biggest gift and their biggest blessing in their life to create an inspiring future going forward, because grief is something that is very powerful and very hard to navigate at times, but it's something that all of us are going to experience in our life. Grief doesn't discriminate. All of us are going to get to experience it at one point or another. And so I think it's very important that we shed light on the topic of grief so that we can help other people navigate grief journeys through our own stories that we've gone through.
Yeah.
And so John, Sydney, I appreciate you guys having me on the podcast today.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much for being here. We're really excited to have you, because not only just because of your story and how profound your testimony is and how it can impact other people's lives, but how closely you align in your audience with our audience, and getting to know a little bit about you and your story has been so impactful. And we know that it's going to have the same effect on our audience as well. So with all of that being said, tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today. What led you to this coaching, this acceptance coaching, and the testimony that you have that you want to share with others?
Appreciate that. So my best way I can phrase this is one of my podcast guests told me, grief chose me and I chose grief. And so back in 2020, I watched my grandfather pass away from cancer in front of me. I held him as he took his last breath, and that was a very hard moment for me. That put me on a path of depression and just a dead stop in my life. 2 years after that, I ended up having my first child, Caden. We got pregnant after 7 years of struggling with infertility. So my wife and I were really excited about that, but that loss in particular was very hard because when we got pregnant and all the way through the pregnancy, we dealt with a lot of emotional and verbal abuse from her family as we went through that. And so it was very, very hard to process why that would happen in a moment where we're bringing new life into the world. And realizing, by the way, when you have a child on the way, you're no longer the priority, the child is. And so, sadly, his heart stopped a day before he was supposed to be born. And that was a moment of my life that was very, very dark. I felt like I died inside. I was completely numb. It was the first time in my life where I felt there's nothing I can say or do to change this situation. I don't get a do-over. I can't fix it. It was a very, very scary moment of my life, one of the worst ones I've gone through. What ensued after that, by the way, was a lot of pain, a lot of depression, a lot of very hard grief the last 2.5 years. And what I will share about that, though, is that my son, when I got to hold him, he was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. And he taught me about love and empathy and compassion at a level I never thought possible. And truthfully, I can say in a lot of words, he changed my life on a very, very profound way. And so his passing was not so much a tragedy and a very, very hardship as I would see it in the moment when it happened, but it was such a big gift and a big blessing. And so I celebrate and honor my son every day with what I do. And the reason I say that is I'm in the grief coach space, and I help people navigate grief, loss, and trauma to discover their self-acceptance and step into their personal power. And I'm very honored to have started a podcast this year. I've recorded 79 episodes and have been along a lot of grief journeys with people, helping them navigate that and watching them discover their gifts and blessings out of the hardest moments of life. And so my son put me on this path. I know that he did, and it makes me happy that I get to honor and celebrate him every day with what I do. And so I'm very sad and heartbroken that he can't be in my life physically, but he's given me such a powerful gift. And I'm out in the world today showing people that grief doesn't have to be a negative, hard thing like a lot of us think it is. It can be something very beautiful that carries us forward.
Absolutely. No, I mean, it's profound because, like you, I've gone through losing a child and other family members. And it just is interesting because I lost my mom prior to losing my daughter, and a different kind of loss, I have you. But the loss of my child, who is still alive through adoption, has been more impactful in my life to date than losing my mom ever was. And I always relate it back to the circle of life, where it's like growing up, you expect that at some point as a child, you'll lose your parents at some point in your life. But as a parent, you expect to get to witness your children grow up, and that your children will be the ones to lose you if you're talking about just to old age or natural causes. And so there's just something that hits differently about your babies than does with family members that raised you and shaped you to be who you were, and the testimony that they get to leave in your life versus us as parents wanting to leave that for our babies. But the footprint that our children have on our life, for whatever reason, has been so much more impactful and such a bigger footprint for me in my own life. And I mean, all of that being said, with your podcast, I mean, you've got, like you said, 79 episodes released. Is that what you said?
Yeah,
I mean,
79.
No, I mean, and you get the opportunity to be picky about the people that you share your story with the platform that you've created. So what motivated you to choose the Common Ground podcast to share your insights? And why is it important for our audience? how can it be impactful for our audience to hear your very relevant message?
I'm really glad you asked that question, Sydney, because when I interview to be on people's podcasts and even when I interview people to come on my show, I'm looking for commonality and I'm looking for authenticity. I'm looking for somebody who's real, somebody that's not afraid to be who they need to be. That's what I look for. And so I've been very blessed, by the way, to have met many, many people that can live in that space and honor themselves and honor their journey. Um, I think the big one that's sticking in my mind right now before I go forward is exactly what you just brought up about your journey, saying that your child has really shaped your path. What a lot of people don't understand about loss and death in a lot of ways is that when we have a family member, like a parent or a grandparent, we've got a lot of decades with them. We have a lot of memories to look back on, a lot of things to fall back on. It's not to say that that's not hard, but we have so many memories we can pull from when we lose a child, and I don't care if that happens in a stillbirth like me or they're 35 years old, you lose a child, you didn't just lose them, you lost a future with them, and you lost an envisioning future for your life at the same time. And so in many ways, it is a little bit, it's a different loss and it hits in a different way, is the way I like to describe it. So I just applaud you for sharing that perspective a few seconds ago. I think listeners, will take a lot away from my story. I've been told by other people on podcasts I have a powerful story to share, and there's a lot of people that learn things out of my story, and that's something that I'm very passionate about on the Empower Grief Journey podcast is I want people to take one or two things away that can help you navigate this journey just a little bit easier is really my big mission. And I'm not here, by the way, to tell you how to do it. I'm not here to say my way is right. I'm here to share my story because I hope something inside of that resonates with you. And I know that all the people I talk to, and I'll share with the audience really quickly, is that you have all the answers inside you. You do. It's not for me to tell you what to do, but you have them inside you. I just want to help you pull those things out because I want you to get that fire underneath you to guide your course because ultimately your grief journey is your journey.
I love that.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. And I want to say, you know, when when people are dealing with grief, a lot of times people will come up and say, "Well, you'll get over it. You'll just move on." And I know that we need to be careful of who we're surrounding ourselves with. But what advice would you give somebody who kind of says that and who to well, let me rephrase that. What kind of advice would you give somebody who's going through grief and has people who come and say that kind of stuff to them? Like how should they respond to that person? Um, politely, graciously, and be like, but also be like, it's not something I can just get over.
I appreciate you asking that question, John, because I get that a lot in my coaching practice. And what I'll share with you guys is that the people that are telling you to move on, they're not safe people. Those are people, by the way, that have not dealt with their grief. They're burying it, suppressing it, and hiding it. And that's what they've been taught to do. That's what they know to do. Now, if you're the person who doesn't do that, like John and Sydney and myself, and you're comfortable being expressive with your emotions and facing that grief head on and saying, I got to process this in my own way, I got to figure out how. When you're around people that give you space for that, they hold space for you and they say, how can I support you today? Or what do you need today that might make this day a little bit easier for you? Or I can see you're going through some hard stuff. What can I do to talk with you? Those are your safe people to go to. And so recognize who's safe and who's not safe. The other half, too, is, by the way, I want grievers to know when you hear those things, it is not a reflection of you. That's the big thing I want you to know.
Mm,
That is a projection of somebody else's crap they're putting on you, and it's got nothing to do with you. I know it's going to be sensitive, by the way, when you hear those things, but I want you to realize that you don't have to be around those people. I use that phrase a lot in coaching, have to. You don't have to. That's a choice. And so I want you to make a different choice for yourself to say, is this safe? Is this unsafe? Is this a supportive person? Not supportive. Give yourself permission to say, this is just not safe for me. I got to go over here. That's what I really would tell them is make that choice for you. Don't make it for other people.
It's profound because, and I always have to say in coaching others too, that blood isn't always thicker than water because some of the people that had the most to say about my grieving journey and what I had chose to sacrifice for the well-being and safety of my daughter were my immediate family or the immediate family that I had left. And I had to learn without anybody giving me the wisdom how to set boundaries where I can say, I love these people and they do not understand what I'm going through because they've never been through anything that can remotely compare. So when you're talking about whether it is immediate family like it was for me or not, how can people set boundaries with the people that they love? And I always tell clients too, they may have your best interest in mind, but as you pointed out, wisely so, they may have just not dealt with their own stuff. And if they haven't dealt with their own stuff, then they cannot help you walk your walk. Going back to when you have somebody going through something really heavy in their life, and maybe the people that they love or that too can love them, but are not giving them safe advice or being a safe presence for them in this walk, how do you set effective boundaries in place while still maintaining and honoring that relationship?
The big one for me, I have had to learn to set boundaries through my own grief course after losing my son. And I will say it is not easy. It's not. And I'll share why. It's because these are people you love. And you'll hear the phrase a lot of times that family will tell you is, well, we're family. And that becomes a bad precedence because that means that they can say whatever they want, do whatever they want. And you're going to be pressured to succumb to that and say, well, it's just family, it's just what they say, it's how they are. But at the end of the day, what you're doing is sacrificing your emotional threshold for other people to make them happy. And so, what you'll hear all the time, like when after I lost Cade and it was hurtful, I had people say things to me like, well, at least we know you make beautiful babies. Thanks for the very unhelpful and hurtful comment. The other one was that you'll have another one. Don't stress too much. It'll happen in the right time. That too is very unhelpful and very insensitive. And when you're in the throes of grief, those things are going to get very heightened. You're going to probably react in a way that you might not normally react, but you're very emotionally volatile and triggered, and you have a right to be. Setting boundaries is a really helpful place in that area where you've got to be comfortable enough and take practice with this, by the way, but say things like, hey, that was really insensitive to say that to me, and I really don't appreciate that. Or just say, hey, I would appreciate if you would say something different because I find that comment offensive. That's not helpful for me. Or that hurts me when you say this, or I don't appreciate that. And what I want you to know about setting boundaries is most people are going to disrespect them right out the gate. They're going to. And that's going to cause some conflict. And now, us as people, by the way, most people don't like conflict. Most people run from it and they go, okay, whoa, okay, all right, I'll just deal with it. Well, that whole I just deal with it thing is what I tell grievers is very dangerous for you because what you're doing right now, you're managing other people's emotions on top of your own grief. And so now you're not even giving yourself space to grieve. You're not even listening to yourself. You're now managing other people and muting yourself or toning you down to fit a box for other people. And what's going to happen is, by the way, that grief is going to come out in one way or the other. And it's going to come out in a very nasty way at some point after you've suppressed it enough because it's kind of like a thing pushing. And once the lid comes off, it goes full force. And that may come out in a very bad way. So I want to encourage grievers listening to this show, please put yourself first and foremost in the grief process. Forget everybody else. Just focus on you. And if people can't respect your needs when you set a boundary and you say, hey, that's hurtful, and they say, oh, well, I didn't mean it, it's just this, or they continue to press the boundary, they're not safe people, like I said. And that does not mean, by the way, you have to go hate on them. That's not what I mean. You just have to say, hey, this is just not a safe person for me right now. And until I get to a place in my healing journey where I can be in that environment and be okay, I just can't be around this person, and that's okay. And just leave it at that.
That's great advice.
Thank you.
You've talked a lot about safe people, and I know you're married, and I know that this is something that happens, and I've seen it when people, especially married couples, lose a child. Um, the person that you're usually the safest with is your spouse, but they're also grieving. They're also going through their own journey, their own pain, and usually, when in marriage, um, relationship, one person's going through something so the other person can pick up the slack and kind of cover and help out. But this is, you're both dealing with your own personal journeys of dealing with grief, and neither one of you are probably the best to help out the other person at that point because they're going through their own grief and trying to deal with their own thing. So, you know, the person who is supposed to be your safest is now going through something. How is that dynamic? How do you handle that? You know, because the one person you're not trying to disconnect from is even though their family is your spouse. And I know that that is really a hard when the loss of a child is a really hard thing, and a lot of couples don't make it out of it.
Hmm. Yeah, John, you're right, and that's where I learned being a lost parent that if you guys go research the numbers on this, you'll see there's a very high percentage of people that lose a child the way I did, get divorced in a very short period of time after that, and that's due to a lot of different reasons, by the way. But going back to the conversation of grief, something that my wife and I had to learn, and we didn't first time we've lost a stillborn, so this is all new territory. Be mindful of that if you're in that situation. This is new territory. You haven't walked this walk before. You don't know what to expect. You don't know what it's going to look like. You don't know what it's going to be 1 month, 1 year, 1 week out. You don't know. But what I want to encourage is be open-minded in that place to understand how you and your spouse grieve. Some people are very internal grievers, like my wife. My wife internalizes a lot of things. That's how they grieve. I'm a very external griever. If I don't talk about my son, if I don't honor him, if I don't focus on him every day, I lose it. And so I share that to say that recognize how you grieve, recognize what things make you safe in your grief process. I see these situations that you brought up between spouses as a big opportunity to come together and not apart. And that's what I see. Now, it's sad that a lot of people don't see that, and I read about it. But the way that it falls apart, by the way, is you just not recognizing that your spouse does things differently. That's really the big one, is it's not recognizing it. I had to learn that there's days and certain times as we were going through that grief process, it wasn't a space for us to talk, maybe, or maybe it was talk a little bit, or maybe it was just a really hard day and silence rules the house, and that's okay. Nothing wrong with that. But be mindful and be courteous of that, be empathetic and understanding. And that's something that my wife and I both had to learn as we went through this healing journey together.
Yeah. No, it's I mean, I can't even imagine. I was not with my daughter's dad, and I was isolated from my family when I went through adoption, so there was nobody to have conflict with. And but I can just conceptually wrap my head around the heaviness of dealing with that with the person that you love the most, and trying to navigate supporting that person emotionally while you have nothing left in your cup to pour from after what you've been through as a couple. For people that, going back to how you said, like, a lot of people don't deal with conflict well. And when you're walking these new territories and you're already so sensitive to any stimulation, what are some either coping strategies or effective ways that we can have those conversations, not just in relation to the loss of a stillborn, but when you are at a conflict with your partner or in a significant grieving period in life? How can we effectively communicate that with the people that we love the most while still honoring that relationship and not being so reactive, even though that's like our body's in that fight or flight, right? So like that's what's in our nature when we're going through that.
Yeah, so to give you guys the short answer on that one to elaborate upon is that we have a lot of very hard conditioning in ourselves through our life circumstances. Like one of my favorite ones I love to talk about in grief is anger. And what have we been told about anger through our whole life? I don't care what situation it is. What have we been told about anger and conflict? It's bad, it's terrible, don't do it, avoid it at all cost, don't go there. Like we've been told those things, right? So when it does come up, we've now got all this belief system and conviction that's coming into this situation that we haven't experienced before. The way that I share with people to get comfortable with conflict, because conflict's not a bad thing, anger is not a bad thing. If you guys want to know what anger is, by the way, it's a secondary emotion. It's not the primary. So when people say like, "Oh, they're pissed," I say, "Did you bother to ask them why they're pissed? Did you go there?" Because if you didn't, by the way, all you're going to see is anger, and you're never going to get to the problem. So, what I learned through my own grief journey is every 23rd of the month, because he was born on the 23rd of September, I woke up angry every day on the 23rd, like clockwork. I don't know why it was, but it just happened. I got to a place 6 months after that where I said, I have a lot of love for my kid. It's got nowhere to go. And so I'm upset today because he's not here. I love my kid and I miss him. I wish I wasn't here. I wish I wasn't dealing with this. I let those emotions come out. And that's where conflict can be very healthy if you understand the core of it. Now, back to your question about couples and conflicts, I wanted to preface all that with that. When you get into a conflict, the thing is, you've got all these beliefs and convictions you've been taught over life coming into this conflict. 9 out of 10 times, it's going to cause that conflict to get worse. So, what we want to do is become the observer in the room. And if you want to think about that, by the way, I'll use my hands. So, person one, person two, picture a person up above that's just looking down at both of you. And that person that's observing, by the way, has zero emotional ties to it. They're all they're saying is, this is what I see, this is what it sounds like, this is what it looks like, this is what it feels like. When you can put yourself in that place in conflict, by the way, and you get rid of those beliefs of anger and conflict and all that, now what you're seeing is, wow, this person's really passionate about this stance. Oh, wow, it feels like this person is feeling this emotion, or this is what it sounds like they're saying. You put yourself into curiosity mode and you put yourself into observation. And when we're there, by the way, we've removed emotion from it. And so this allows us to better understand that person in a conflict. It allows us to listen, it allows us to observe. And in that place, by the way, we might have somebody very angry coming at us, but instead of seeing anger, what we see is the opposite. We see, I see hurt, I see pain, I see somebody going through a lot. I see somebody that's very sad. I had a coaching client recently who was very angry. I mean, she was going through a lot of crap in her life when I met her. 3 weeks later, she's now saying phrases like, I don't have to, and I don't want to deal with this. I saw all that on the first meeting. She didn't. She saw it on the fourth one. So I say this to say that when you do get into conflict with things, be okay with conflict. Just be okay. No one's going to get hurt. Nothing bad's going to happen, but just listen and observe. And when you see that, by the way, you'll actually see what's underneath all that. And that's what matters. And that's why couples that go this way miss that opportunity. Couples that stay together and go that way, they get that.
I love that you said anger is a secondary emotion, because if I had been told that when I was 14, it would have changed the trajectory likely of my whole life. Because after all of the loss that I had been through in my adolescence, I had all of the adults around me say things like, she's a really angry kid. And I was not an angry kid. I was a really broken, hurt, confused kid. If I had had one adult tell me and teach me that anger was a secondary emotion before I was 22, it would have altered the like total trajectory of my life.
Hey, Sydney, can we build off that for a second?
Of course we can.
One of the things you brought up there is that you got told that Sydney is angry. And is it a fair statement to say, by the way, that you identified with that emotion?
Absolutely, it was at the time.
And what came out of identifying with that emotion, right?
I
What came
lived
out?
in that emotion.
Okay, so I want to ask you a more powerful question. What if instead you got told at 14, Sydney feels like she's angry? Sydney's not angry. Sydney feels angry. How would that have changed your perspective?
It would have made it not something that I was, but something that I had control over changing. Because a feeling is something that we can work through, and something that you are feels like part of your identity. And so when I feel something, I can work through that feeling and come to a more logical conclusion or whatever it is regarding the situation. When I was told I was angry, that became my outermost shell that I presented myself to people by, because it became what protected me after everything I had been through.
And what was underneath everything that you felt, underneath all that anger? What was underneath that?
It was fear. It was fear that I wasn't enough for my mom because she had left me, fear that I wasn't enough for my dad because he had gotten remarried, and that felt like abandonment at the time. It was fear that my brothers would never see me as their caretaker, even though I had surrendered lots of my childhood to make sure they were protected from things that I didn't want them to go through. And so it was really powerful. It was a very powerful part of my identity, but it was power that I wished that it wouldn't have had. And it was because of the language that the adults in my life used.
So what if instead, by the way, and I'll end up on this one, but what if instead someone said, Sydney's feeling angry right now. She is fearful for these reasons. And what if they had addressed that with you and said that to you? It looks like you're going through some anger because you're fearful of certain outcomes. How would that have changed your outcome, by the way, at that point? If somebody had acknowledged all those things, how would your feelings change out of
I
that
would have
fear.
felt very seen. It would have made me feel like I didn't need to protect myself as much. And then I would have felt safe talking about the underlying emotions.
I appreciate you sharing what you just did because that's what I try to walk people through when I coach them.
No,
So
it's,
thank
I
you.
mean, it's fantastic.
Thank you for doing that.
No, thank you for demonstrating to everybody who maybe hasn't heard that anger is a secondary emotion. That was one of the singular most powerful things that someone eventually told me in my life.
Well, I appreciate you being vulnerable enough to share with me just now in this 2 minute interaction because this is what I want people to learn in grief is that if we just say, oh, well, she's angry. Well, you just gave her a label, so now she's going to be angry. Versus if
Yeah.
you say, hey, it looks like you feel angry today. And she said, yeah, I feel angry because I'm fearful about being enough or being this or that having happened. Oh, wow. I'm really sorry that you're going through that. How can I support you today with that? And
Absolutely.
notice, and I know listeners are going to hear your shift, by the way, in that conversation of where you went from anger into I feel seen and heard. That's the shift I like to show people.
Absolutely.
So, for people listening to this conversation, um, first of all, like, have you ever felt stuck? Like you were in that place where whether either people were labeling you or you felt labeled by yourself. And sometimes we can put self labels on us. Like I'm stuck. Like especially going through grieving. I feel like I'm not making any progress. I feel like I'm stuck every day. Every day is going nowhere. I don't feel like this world's ever going to change, and I feel like I'm going to be stuck in this one emotion for the rest of my life. I don't know if you felt that during this trial for you, or not, but what would you say to somebody who's saying I'm stuck? I can't. I don't know what the next step to take. I don't know how to get myself out of bed because grief is just so overwhelming me, and I've been in bed for now 10 days because I just can't seem to get up and get out.
I have a lot of good advice for that, but my big ones that I'll share to answer your first part of that with labels. David Goggins said this really well in a reel I watched about 2 years ago. He said, those that criticize others really got something going on with themselves. And so, what I would share to somebody going through grief, I want you to remember that because a lot of times people place projections on you of what they see, think, or feel you should be for them, what's not right for you. And so be really careful with labels. Just like gave Sydney that example in coaching. Is Sydney really angry or does Sydney feel angry? Because there's a big difference between the two. One of them identifies with the anger, the other one actually just feels it as an emotion and takes control back. Now, in grief, that's the same thing I'll share. There's a lot of times in grief you feel stuck. I was there a lot, by the way. It was not fun. I said those words. I'm stuck. I don't know how to deal with this. And when you say that, by the way, stuck just means I haven't found an answer yet. I haven't found what I'm looking for. I haven't found that path forward yet. Something I read in James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, really powerful book, by the way, and I like to share this with people going through grief. James Clear is a guy that got hit in the head with a baseball when he was very young. He went through a real dilapidating process of rehab to get his life back. It was a very long process for him. He talks about focusing on 1% a day. 1%, that's it. And you're 30%, set 37% better at the end of the year. So, what I tell grievers, by the way, if you're stuck in bed and can't get out of bed, by the way, you're not broken. You don't need to be fixed. I'm going to tell you guys that right now. What you do want to do, by the way, just get out of bed one day. I mean it, just that. That's all I would ever ask you. Just get out of bed. That's it. I don't care if you make it to the living room. I don't care if you make it to the front door. I don't care about any of that crap. I care about did you just get up today? That's a win, right? And so I want to focus on the win. Now, if you make it to the window and open the blinds, that's another win, right? If you make it to the get to the shower after 4 days, that's a win too, by the way. I try to build small wins in people going through grief or people that feel stuck because when we go through grief, it can feel like the whole world's shattered around us. And now we're just left with pieces of a mirror trying to pick them up and glue them together. And that can feel very overwhelming and very daunting and very just like, ugh, I just want to give up. And I've been there a lot. But what I'll share is focus on those small wins every day, just small ones. The other one too that I'll share that's really helpful if you're a little more courageous in your grief process, change your environment completely. Jump in your car. I'm telling you, don't even plan for things. Just shoot north, south, east, west, pick a direction and go. And the reason I say this is that, for me personally, there's a state park about an hour and a half from my house, roughly. Now, I don't go there all the time, but when I'm feeling down, I go there. It's a big change of scenery. It's a big change of environment. I don't live there. Who knows what's going to happen? Now, I do that on purpose because when I get out of my environment, everything's different. And what it does up here, by the way, is shakes up your thought process. And it does it in a good way too, by the way. When you change your environment, you end up asking yourself better questions. You end up asking yourself, I just don't like where I'm at anymore. And I'm over this right now, actually. Like, what can I do right now? Or is there somebody I could call? Is there an opportunity I have? Did I connect with somebody on Facebook? Was there an opportunity a month ago from something? You start thinking about all these things when you're outside the environment you're used to. And what I'm offering to you guys today is try that. Change your environment. Just take a drive an hour and a half away, and go find a beach, go find a park. I go to the mountains all the time because nobody's up there, and I like to be in peace and quiet. Or go to a library, or go to a coffee stand place, something like that, or coffee joint.
Yeah.
Change your environment. Give yourself that opportunity to get out of the comfort of where you're at and just a little bit outside it in a peaceful place. You'll get a lot of answers, I'll tell you that.
Oh, it's so true. I mean, that change of environment is so powerful in our bodies, like chemically, literally, physically, mentally. It's crazy what it does. What two of the things that I really practice in my coaching business that are definitely not for everybody, in terms of how you mentioned just people, how they deal with grief differently. Those two concepts, though, are radical acceptance and then exposure therapy. And so one of the things that I would do is that I have absolutely zero control in a very similar way that you had absolutely very zero control in what happened to you. And in moments where that felt really heavy and suffocating, I would say to myself, there is nothing that I can do about the self, but I can choose to love myself and support myself in this moment. And I would pick a new spot because new coffee shops are things that I really love to explore. So I'd find some place that I hadn't been to, and I would take my headphones and an adult coloring book or a book that I was reading, and I would allow myself to go completely disconnected from my phone or other things and just be in that new spot, in that breath of radical acceptance. I cannot do anything. So instead, I'm going to choose to love and support myself in this moment. Do you practice either or both of those concepts in your coaching?
I do actually, and I love what you just said. That's very beautiful, Sydney. I love that radical acceptance and giving yourself permission. I think that's the biggest thing that people go through grief, struggle to find and even allow themselves to feel. Um,
Tough
you know,
one.
rad
Want to be in control.
Yeah, when you bring that up, what comes to my mind is I share with people too, because I read a lot of Stoic philosophy. And when we focus on what we can't control, we feel very anxious. We feel very on high alert, like what's going to happen, or I got to protect myself from this. And our brain's going all over the place because this thing's not meant to make you happy, it's meant to protect you. And so when you're focusing on what you can't control, you will feel less control. So,
Mm,
what I bring back to people in my coaching practice is what can you control today? And, I will share with you if you're going through a lot of grief, the biggest things you can do is focus on what you can control and also make a big routine for yourself that's daily. I don't even care what it is, but give yourself a routine because what this does is gives you back control in a small way. And I know it's small, but I will tell you right now, it's a massive shift in your head. Because when you do feel that sense of control back in your life, you'll start making better decisions that align with you. One of my things is I drink the same tea every morning. I don't remember what the heck it's called, the bergamot tea. I'm trying to remember what the hell it's called. Um, it's gonna drive me nuts. Earl Grey.
there you
Um, I
go.
drink I drink Earl Grey tea every morning like clockwork. I have the same breakfast every day. I have the same morning routine with certain things. Even when I coach, I structure my calls a certain way. I do all these things to create a sense of control because what it does, it centers me and it grounds me. And so when you're centered and grounded, like I said, you're going to make better decisions for yourself because you're going, okay, I got this. You know what? I can make it today. And what'll happen is when grief rears its ugly head, by the way, which it does. You're going to sit there on those days when you've got that feeling of control and grief starts trying to come up and you're going to go, okay, I see you. I feel you. I understand you. Today's going to be a little bit harder of a day, but I got control of my routine. And that's something that I get to decide over what's going to happen or not. And it's going to help you work through that grief a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely.
I kind of want to bring this up. I know we talked a little bit about, like, even in the beginning where you said some people will be like, "Oh, get over it," and stuff like that. The reason why I want to bring this back up is that I think there's people who don't deal with grief and kind of try to get around dealing with grief and to get past it, to get over it. They're usually the people who are saying, just get over it because they haven't dealt with their own grief. And then they experience grief again. And I think it's important that we deal with grief, because when we don't, the next time it's even going to be worse, because not only are we dealing with the grief that just happened, but we still have to deal with the grief that we've never dealt with before.
Correct.
And I don't know if you can talk a little bit about that, if that's something you experience with some of your clients or anything, but the importance of dealing with grief. And I think there's a lot of things that we don't grieve in relationships and little smaller things in life. We deal we're forced to deal with grief on the big levels, but we don't deal with the small deaths in our lives, the deaths of relationships, the deaths of jobs, the death of different stuff that goes on in our life. And that's all unhealed grief that we carry on a daily basis. And then we end up bringing that into a bigger grief because we never dealt with it, the smaller griefs.
John, that's a powerful question, my friend, and I'm glad you brought that up. I'm going to share with you guys a story about a woman that I know. She went through a lot of hardship in life. She got divorced at a young age, had a small child. Um, she also, at the same time, lost her father right around the same time, divorcing about a year or so, 2 years around that time frame. So she went through a lot of death of a marriage, death of her father she was very close to. This woman that I know has not dealt with grief in over 40 years. Very long time not to deal with grief. Now, she's also experienced the death of her father, her second father in life, because her mother got remarried. She dealt with that. She also dealt with several other family members that passed along the way. Every time one of these events happened to this woman, she always pressed on with life like it never happened. And so every time death happened, she would knuckle under and shove it under the carpet. And she will continue to try to walk through life. This woman has a lot of health issues because of that, lots of them. And she also hangs to control a lot in her life. You will notice that when you don't deal with grief, like I said, it will come out in other areas of life. And the way that I mean that is grief can have adverse health impacts to you. Grief can also cause you behavior wise in your external environment to make decisions that aren't necessarily right for you. So, this woman that I know, she has a lot of conflict with people, lots of it. She thrives on conflict. That conflict, sadly, is not actually even who she is. She has not dealt with grief. So, conflict is her way of taking control and trying to control her environment with other people. And it creates massive conflict in her life. She's very unhappy and very unhealthy. And it's a very poor life situation. I share this, John, because what you talked about is another lesson I teach people in coaching. When emotions are this big, they're very easy to deal with. You can sit there and say, I got this. I know how to make a different choice. I can do this over here. When you stack out 30, 40 years of emotion, now we're dealing with this, and this is a cluster. Now we're dealing with 40 years of repressed emotions. This could be multiple people that have passed through our lives, multiple job losses, divorce, losing a child. Once we're dealing with all those things all at once, it is a big burden. It is hard to face, and it will cause years of turbulence in your life trying to sort through all those things because you never allowed yourself time and space to grieve those losses. You let alone never even gave yourself space to understand how those things changed you or who you became because of those things. And so now we're dealing with somebody that isn't even themselves and they don't even know who the hell they are. That's the really sad part. That's the really hard part. And that's why I have a lot of empathy and understanding for people like that because you don't even see who you are. I can see it because I can see through the crap. I know who you are buried underneath all this shit. I know who you are.
Sure.
So I have to get you down in that place to see yourself. And that's a big challenge for a lot of people. So my other big point, and I'll wrap up with this, is when you suppress your grief, you may not see it right away, but you'll see it 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the line. And you will see it reflected in your life, quality of life. You'll see it in the quality of your relationships. You'll see it in your health. And that's why I want to encourage people to talk about grief and deal with their grief. And when I say deal with it, I mean give it space, hold space for it, talk about it, feel it, understand it. What's it trying to tell you? I want you to work through some of those things so you can have a better understanding of yourself. Because if you're going to be like the woman I just described to you guys, 40 years deep with a whole lot of grief like that, life is going to be very, very hard for you, harder than it even has to be. And I share this story because we can learn from other people's mistakes, if you will, other people's life journeys. We can learn from that so that we don't have to do that. So this is where I'll give you guys a choice, by the way, because I have choices too, just like you. And I always say, why don't I give you the opposite choice? Why don't I give you that choice to heal yourself a bit and give yourself a different path in life that might be more fulfilling?
Right. Well, they say that the wise man learns from other people's mistakes and the fool has to learn by their own. And it's very true, especially in grief. Sometimes people just personality wise have to learn by their own mistakes, though. They can't. There's almost a pride that exists underlyingly that I can figure it out. I don't need to heed the wisdom of others that have been through this. One of the really powerful things that was told to me while I was training, doing all of my licensing to be a coach, is that children process things differently than adults. And the analogy that was used for me was that children take their trauma and they shove it in a coat closet because their brain hasn't fully developed. And so they don't know how to deal with these big emotions. So it gets put in the coat closet and they cram it in and they shut the door and then they just avoid the door. Like, don't open the door, because then, like that analogy of the pressure in a can or a jar, it comes flooding back out and we get these really big emotions and behavioral outlashes. Whereas an adult, when we're processing through grief, it's more of a flowing river. And it's like, you can't stop the river. You can't put a dam in the river, like the river's already going. And so it's just something that we end up having to confront on a regular basis when big life events or big traumas happen. When you're dealing with somebody that has dealt with early childhood trauma that maybe was unaddressed, and then maybe even compiled on that has some stuff that's happened in their adulthood or early adulthood, how do we bridge that gap of how our childhood brain teaches us that we need to deal with trauma versus how our adult brain is now, this is just in my life. Just like you said, it comes up in conflict, it comes up in jobs. How do we bridge that for somebody that's like, now it's too much, I don't know how to deal with this anymore?
One bit of advice I got from my coach many, many years ago, and this is a very hard one, by the way, but I'm going to share it with you guys because it is very powerful if you can find it and see it in the moment. A lot of times when we have that outburst, even as adults, by the way, I don't care if you're 30 or 50 years old and you have an outburst, right? That inappropriate anger, as they like to call it, which again, I say anger is not really the thing we pay attention to. A lot of times that outburst, sadly, is who we were as a kid. It actually has nothing to do with us as adults. It's what happened as a kid. And so if you were a child, by the way, that got bullied a lot, just like I did, I got bullied a lot when I was a kid, all the way through my probably 15. Um, if somebody gets at me the right way, that little 10-year-old boy comes out, and it comes out quick. He comes out and like, let's fight, let's box. And I have to sit there when I feel that and go, that's 10-year-old Chris coming out. And 10-year-old Chris is going to get somebody in a way worse off situation right now if you let him out of the box. And so I have to sit there, by the way, when 10-year-old Chris comes out, and I have to say, hey, you're safe. You're okay. You don't need to fight today. And I have to talk to 10-year-old Chris like he's a 10-year-old. And I have to tell him, you're safe. You're fine. You're not threatened. You're not 10 years old anymore. You're 38 years old. You know how to deal with this, by the way. You're not the same person back here. You're stronger. You're smarter. You know that whatever this is in front of you, by the way, you don't have to. This is an option. And so back to your question, and I hope I answered that as best I could, but we have to guide our inner child. And we all have an inner child, by the way. That Sydney that was angry. Now Sydney's not angry. Sydney feels angry because Sydney went through some things and experienced some things. So if we go back to angry Sydney, as they called you, and we really ask angry Sydney what was going on, well, angry Sydney is going to say the following: I'm hurt. I'm sad. I feel lost. I feel confused. I'm fearful. All those things were underneath there is what angry Sydney needed to hear. And when angry Sydney hears those things, angry Sydney's not angry Sydney anymore. She's a sad little girl that's lost and needs help. She needs
Mhm.
comfort. She needs to feel seen and heard and understood. And when we give that to her, that doesn't happen anymore because now we alleviated all those things going on. And
Right.
so I would encourage people going through that. If you do find yourself in that situation and you find yourself lashing out or, acting out is inappropriate. It's a word I don't like, but it's what people use. I want you to ask yourself that what point in your younger age, from somewhere between 5 and 15 years old, was there a moment of something that happened in your life where you responded that same way to something? I don't know what it was, but figure out what that is. And then I want you to say if that version of you is sitting right here in front of you, right here, right now, what would you tell that version of yourself that it needed to hear in that moment that never got told? And that's where that anger will literally come down. It'll come down so fast, it'll make your head spin.
So, and that's gonna was gonna bring me to one of my questions, but um, I'm gonna save that for later.
Mm.
Uh, but I was thinking about, grief and, who's around you, and I think it's different for each people. I think grief is what I want to say by this is that there isn't a book that works for everybody in grief, and this is what I'm going to premise it by. And on my story, for me, I ended up moving down to Myrtle Beach as a last ditch effort to try to save my marriage, and ended up getting divorced down there. And I had nobody around me. And, I had made friends down in Myrtle Beach. I had people who I consider friends, but all my family was up in Philly. All my closest friends were not there. And that was a journey I had to go on by myself without, the having crutches of family friend to, take me drinking, take me out to get my mind off of it to go do that. And going through it was really, really, really hard. But when I look back on it, I am so thankful I was by myself because I look back and I say, man, if I would have had those people that to lean on, to go and cry to, then I wouldn't have dealt with my shit the way I the way I was forced to deal with it. Like I was forced to deal with it head on. And I think it's by the grace of God that he got me down there to exactly to go through that so that I would be alone, so that the only person that I could lean on was him instead of friends who would, whisper sweet nothings in my ear. Because that's what grieving, what people do when somebody's grieving, they just whisper whatever they think is going to help the person and, get them on so that until they can leave and the person has to grieve by themselves. Um, I didn't have to deal with any of that, but for some people, I think they need that. I think they couldn't survive in that alone state that I could, and that's what I mean by there's not a book out that it's one fit all.
Mhm.
For some people, you need to have those people because you naturally will pull yourself away and not go out. You if you're the one who's going to stick yourself in that room, you need somebody saying you need to get out and get some fresh air. You know,
Mhm.
me, I was fine. I'm an outward going person. I'm more apt to go drink my problems away than stay in my room. So I needed to stay in my room. I needed that time to inner reflect and ask myself the hard personal questions and not just complain about my situation to somebody else.
John, I really appreciate you being vulnerable enough to share that because there are people like you and I that can handle that journey on our own. And I think that in a lot of ways, I think God gave you a big gift because if you did just try to drink your problem away, like a lot of people do, people find a coping mechanism a lot. Everybody does. Everybody's got a mechanism, smoking, drinking, doing whatever it is. Um, it doesn't actually take care of the problem, by the way. It just masks it for a little bit. It makes you feel good for a hot second, and then you get right back in that state of, this is the shit I got to deal with. Um, I think it took a lot of strength for you as a person, is what I heard come out of you, is that you found a lot of strength within yourself to navigate that next phase of life. And I think that for whatever reason, that gave you an opportunity to reflect on what worked and what didn't, and also do a lot of inner work on yourself to say, what about me needs to change? What about me is making things work? What's not making things work? I feel like you've done that work, my friend. I got that vibe from you. I think you've done a lot of healing work. And so I just want to say I applaud you for that.
Thank you. I mean, it's still a journey. I still feel and I still go through things today. And it reminds me, like, tag, I'm not done healing. I'm not done. It's like that just came up and it took me back to that place. It took, I constantly, things happen, things trigger me and I get taken back and I'm like, okay, that means I still have work to do. It's a reminder. And instead of being scared of those triggers you know, that happen to me, I embrace them because it's like, okay, here's another healing point. Here's another healing point. Or, I I may have thought I've healed from this, but I really haven't. I still, man, man, I covered up. I covered up the hole, but there's still a hole in that ground. I still haven't gotten to the real root of it. And I got to do more hard work. For me, like that's the way I think. It's constantly. It's like, okay, let me re-look at this. Let me re-go in. There's still part of it that needs working on it, and that I need to address because those issues are still coming back. Like I'm still getting triggered by certain things, and you know, I I'm trying to heal, and I know this is going to be a constant thing till the day I die. I know I'm never, you know, grief is like a minefield. You know, you might pick up a mine here and dis disengage it, but there's another mine somewhere else, and there's another mine somewhere else, and you don't know where they're all buried at. You don't know until you step on that mine and it goes beep 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 beep. You're like, oh crap.
Yeah.
I
You
need
know, well,
Here
you
it
know what,
goes.
brother?
There it
You know,
goes.
I'm gonna share with you, man. You brought up a big point that I also try to share with people going through grief. When you get triggered, by the way, stop thinking about it the way society has told you about triggers. They got it all wrong, backwards. What triggers are, by the way, they're a part of you that's not healed yet, that's trying to teach you something. Think about how powerful that is, because society will say, oh, if you're triggered, it's bad. And they jump on you that quick, right? But what if you gave yourself that second like you did, like you just talked about? You gave a great example of that, by the way. Triggers are our teachers that try to help us heal parts of us that aren't fully healed yet. And so if we do that, by the way, we're showing ourselves compassion, we're showing ourselves grace, we're showing ourselves understanding. We're not coming at us, by the way, to say, oh, you screwed up. Oh, you got triggered today. You got a problem. Oh, you're not healed over here. No, we're saying, hey, this is a part of me. It's not fully healed yet. And I got to pay attention to this thing a little bit. What's this thing trying to tell me? What's this trying to show me right now? That was very powerful how you talked about that, my friend. Appreciate you bringing that up.
I love what you said about triggers being a teacher. That's powerful. Because it's true. Society has lots of stuff about grieving wrong collectively, but I don't know if it's ever been worded that way.
Well, I learned it from a guy on my show, one of my early podcast episodes, and he's an autistic guy that helps people with relationships learn how to heal themselves. And he was on my show, and I thought it was really funny halfway through the episode. I brought up something about triggered, the way society talks about it, and he said, I'm so sick of people talking about how they're triggered. I'm really sick of it. And I said, okay, I got to hear this. I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, being triggered is not an emotion. He said, I'm tired of people using that thing as an excuse to act shitty. He said, when you're triggered, there's something going on inside you, man. There's an emotion trying to be heard, trying to be seen. He said, you're triggered by something, meaning you saw something that created an emotion inside you. Trigger's not a state. Trigger's not an emotion. It's guiding you to an emotion. And so he said, if we would slow down and pause and reflect when we feel triggered to ask ourselves those deeper questions, we might find out, by the way, there's a part of us that isn't healed yet, or maybe there's something in there that we need to be kinder to ourselves. I heard John talk a lot in a very compassionate way about himself 2 minutes ago, talking about being triggered. That's the right way to talk about it. But society will go, "Ooh, you're triggered, bad." And it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, no, we got to stop beating ourselves up. I've always told people in grief, by the way, if you want to badmouth yourself and put yourself down, there's plenty of people out there that'll do it for free for you. You don't even have to. They'll do it for you. So I said, don't beat yourself up, right? Don't do that. Like we already got people to take care of that. So why don't we do the opposite, by the way, and be kind and compassionate to ourselves as we grieve and give ourselves a freaking break. I mean, no offense, but you lost your child in an adoption thing. I lost mine to a stillbirth. John had a divorce situation happen and had to deal with it by himself. We all went through some seriously hard shit. Is it fair for us to be really hard on ourselves and beat ourselves up? We already got people to do that for us. So why don't we be kind to ourselves?
That's the truth.
And if I can say something real quick, I think the reason why I spoke at it as like a minefield is because to me, triggers are a warning system. It's a warning system, not like the negative reaction, but it's a warning system where if we don't deal with it, like then the bomb goes off, right? That's because we haven't dealt with the trigger. But see, the trigger's the beep, 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 like, oh crap, let me fix something so that I don't blow up. But when I hear that trigger and I ignore that trigger, that's when the opportunity for the mind to go off goes off. And it creates a much bigger, deeper issue in your life because you didn't have compassion with yourself and say, okay, I'm still unhealed. I'm still not completely over this. And it's all right. It's all right not to be completely over. And see, that's the thing, because people constantly want to say, I'm done, I'm healed, I'm over it. Because it gives me some kind of, I guess, power, perception of power that you have over your circumstance, where the circumstance there's nothing to have power over. It's a reality. It's now a part of you. Instead of embracing it and realizing that this is the new you, right? You've dealt with trauma. We like to say that's something that happened to us, and I can just get over it like anything else in life. But if you come to a point where you understand, you come to grasp with yourself, this is the new me. You know, like my my dad has lost his toe due to diabetes and stuff. This is the new him. Like he has to realize that's the new him. If he goes on and just wants to act like he doesn't like his toe's still there, he's going to trip and fall because he's not living in reality that that's the new him. Like he has to relearn how to walk. He has to relearn how to put balance on his foot. And it's nothing against him personally. It's just his new reality. And we because trauma hurts us. We want to get over it. We want to get past it. We want to act like it's no longer part of our lives instead of embracing it and saying, okay, um, I love this. I want to go a little theological on you. Um, like this, like the nails in Jesus's hands and feet, right? When he comes back, they were scars. It didn't define who he was. It was a reminder of what he did and what he went through. And we we don't let trauma, we don't let grief just become our scars. And those scars are a beautiful reminder of what we did and what we through and what we've accomplished. We look at them in the negative side instead of looking at them in the positive side. You know that they're a positive reminders of how much we've grown, how much we've overcome, how much we've learned and become better in life because of it. Um, One of the things you say, and what you said, and I forget where you said it, um, but you said that maybe it was what you wrote down on the thing. You said that your son doesn't know what a positive impact he's had on your life, you know, from doing all this. And you can look at look at the hardship of everything you left, but he's also given you a gift. He's also
Hmm.
given you a gift. And we if you want to look at that whole trauma negatively, then you can never accept the gift that he's given you.
Very true. Very, very true. Yeah, John, what you were talking about, I get asked this a lot when I'm a guest on podcasts. I've had a couple of people say, well, how can you say that losing your son is the biggest gift you ever got? I get asked that question a lot. And I say, because if I look at it like the tragedy that it was, I said, and I live in that space, by the way, I said, I will be a very depressed person and I will question why the hell I'm even living right now, to be very honest. I said, it will take me to some very dark places. And I said, by the way, those emotions are still there. I can go visit them anytime I want. But I said, here's the thing. If I let that tragedy, just like John talked about, if I let that thing be scar tissue over my wound, now I survived it, right? I'm still here. I still have life. One of the biggest things I share with people too, and an exercise I walk people through that are really having a hard day in grief is put your hands like this over your heart. Close your eyes. Don't think about things. Feel your heart. I want you to feel it going in and out constant. And I walk people through a meditation doing that exercise. But what you'll find, by the way, you have life. You're still here. You survived it. Even the worst moment of life, you're still here. You survived it. So what this means, by the way, is that this situation can either define you or it can propel you forward. And that's a choice you get to make. I'm not here to say which is right or wrong, but I'm here to tell you you do have a choice. And so I chose to say I can either be really depressed about this and cause a lot of havoc in my life. I can become an alcoholic or whatever, like people do. I can do that. That's an option there. I can always take that. Or I can sit here and say, he's a gift. And my
Yeah.
gift, by the way, is to go out and help other people. My gift is to change the way the world sees grief. My gift is to hold space for people that don't have safe people in their life. My gift is to coach other people to find their personal power so they can go out and help people. How powerful is that?
Mm.
And back to I don't remember if it was you two I was talking to about legacy. It might have been another guest I was talking to, but when I thought about legacy for a minute, I thought about all of us in our lives, all of us. I don't care who you are, what walk of life you come from, where you live. We all have a legacy, right? We all have a purpose here. And so I said, think about if you were going to die tomorrow, think about that. Death is imminent. It's going to happen tomorrow at 5 o'clock, right? Yeah, what do you want to look back on in your life? Do you want to say I got defined by my circumstances and it was this terrible, awful, nasty thing, and thank God I'm going to die? Or do you want to be that person that says, you know what? I hope I have a legacy left. I hope I created a legacy that I went out there and did something with this thing. And it might have looked awful in my perspective, but it might have helped some other people. How would you want to feel if you knew what was on the clock tomorrow at 5 o'clock? How would you want to feel? I can tell you most people don't want to pick the other option. They want to create the legacy. And I know everybody does. And that's why I think grief holds a special place. Back to something John said a little bit ago. There is no 12-step program. There is no perfect way to grieve. There is no right or wrong way. When I coach people, some people like the David Goggins method I teach. Some people like Tony Robbins method I teach. Some people need a softer side. Some people need a more hard loving side. There is no right or wrong way. There is no 12-step thing. There's only your path and your journey. And that's what's beautiful about you as a person, is your journey. And your journey, by the way, doesn't need to be mine, doesn't need to be Sydney's, doesn't need to be John's. It needs to be your own journey because once you discover that, you'll have your beautiful gift to go out in the world and help other people. And those other people, by the way, because they heard your story, they're going to go out and help other people beyond that. And that snowball effect that we're creating on the podcast today is exactly what's going to change the world from the harsh, hate related place we live in today to a loving, compassionate place where we hold space for each other and respect each other's stories and learn from each other. Because ultimately, this world's a beautiful place if we would all learn to just accept each other and accept that grief is part of our life. It doesn't need to be suppressed, it needs to be let out. It needs to guide us, not hurt us. So why not give ourselves that opportunity?
I love that.
Well, I mean, we can talk, I think, all day long and have a great conversation. This is time is flying by, and so as we just start to wrap this up, I just want to move to our one of our closing sections. of key takeaways.
Key takeaways.
And I'm going to give you my key takeaway and invite Sydney to give her key takeaway. But I think you kind of just summed it up with like what you were just talking about. It's like we're all on our own journeys. Don't be scared of grief, do the hard work with grief. Make sure you surround yourself with safe people. And realize and give yourself grace because not every journey is the same. There is no book. If it's taken you in your mind a little longer, it's okay. If you're moving at a more quicker pace, it's okay. It's what if you're doing the work, if you're giving it the ample time and energy, then everything else is up in the air. You can there's no set timetable, there's no set, way to do things. But give it its due diligence. Give it its important. And if you need to reach out to somebody like Chris, who can take you if you don't know how to go on that journey, or want help going on that journey. Seek that help out. You don't have to do it alone, um, unless you want to.
Right. Big one. My biggest takeaway in this was what you said about triggers. Like a trigger is a pinpoint to identify where we still have opportunity for growth. Because I think that especially as you go further in your journey of grief and where it gets to the point where it's no longer an everyday suffocating thing and it comes up more in that landmine effect of just walking and every once in a while you hit a trigger and you have to address it. Society teaches you that once you've gotten to a place where your everyday life is operating more normal or more fluid after a big event or a big loss or something that you're grieving, that those triggers are now no longer acceptable the way that maybe they once were in the process or in the thick of that grieving. So being able to reframe that train of thought and say, this is an opportunity of growth and not treat it as something bad or touchy or taboo and acknowledge where you're at in your healing journey, allowing those to be clues for a roadmap of where you're at is incredibly empowering.
That's a powerful takeaway, Sydney.
You're the one that said it. I'm grateful. If you had one thing that, like, if internet had glitched, as it very well did on us, and our viewers could only hear one thing from you, this one key takeaway, what would you want them to take away from our conversation today?
What I would love for them to take away is the following. This grief journey that you're on or going to go through is uniquely yours, and you do not need to copy anybody or do anything different other than where your intuition and your mind is telling you to go. I want you to travel that journey with courage and compassion for yourself and to be kind to yourself. This is something that's going to unfold over time and it will give you a beautiful, beautiful gift when the timing of that is right. So I want you guys to travel that journey through grief with courage and compassion and do it the way you need to do it, whatever way works best for you.
That's an awesome takeaway. And now we're gonna move to our before I do that, um, for everybody who is listening to this podcast, we want you to write down on whichever platform you're listening to it in the comment section. Please give us your takeaway. You've heard our takeaways, and we want to hear yours. It allows us to know what resonated with you with the show. And it's really cool to see what different people took away from it. So we appreciate the feedback and the takeaways. So make sure you do that.
The final five.
And we're going to move on to the final five. And so me and Sydney are going to go back and forth and ask Chris a couple questions. And I'm going to start out by saying, Chris, who was your hero and why?
Well, my hero currently is David Goggins. He's my hero. And the reason for that is he went through some serious life challenges, health challenges, went through a lot of abuse his whole childhood. And he is such a motivating inspiration to what you can accomplish if you put your mind to work and you have faith within yourself and you understand that this is not some journey to complete, but this is a journey to become better every day. And his big thing that I didn't share in the podcast, but it's how I treat my grief and my grief and my workouts too. One more, just one more. One more day, one more minute, one more hour, one more push up, one more pull up, just one more. Put yourself in that mindset. It is so powerful. That's why he's my hero. He put me on a course of confidence and compassion for myself, and just to know that I can be better than even I am today.
That's a good one. I like that. One more. My dad used to say when we were doing our athletic after school programs and things like that, when they'd say, okay, 10 more or whatever, he'd be like, you can do 10 of anything. Like, we're all dying or whatever. We've been doing this for an hour. He'd be like, what are you complaining about? You can do 10 of anything. Then it just translated to everything where I'm like, I cannot write this paper. He's like, what are you talking about? You can write one anything. And it's just like, that's the thing in our family. You can do one of anything.
I love that. That's such a great mindset.
Yeah, no, it's an ongoing joke now too. My second question for you is, what is the best piece of advice that you've been given that still makes you smile to this day?
Oh my God, the best bit of advice I've gotten. Oh man, that is a tough one. Um, the best bit of advice I've gotten to this day, I'm going to share my grandfather's mother's phrase she used to use in the 30s. Sorry, 1930s, because we're in the 21st century now. His mother had this phrase called, try to slow down so I can say this right. Good, better, best. Never let it rest until the good is better and the better's best. Um,
I love that.
Yeah, his mother used to say that to him growing up during the Depression and the 1930s. He also carried it forward in my lifetime when I was growing up. And so he always told me, don't settle in life, don't stay complicit. Always know that something can be better. And so you always can do that. So that was one of the best bits of advice I got.
I love.
Awesome. And I don't know if this is going to be David Goggins or not, but what is the best book, or what is the book or saying or quote that has changed your life?
Oh man, one of the best books I've read. I'm a David Goggins nut. I love Can't Hurt Me. I just love that book. Um, he's got so many good quotes, on everything he talks about. But his whole thing is just, his quote is "Stay hard." That's his quote, and I remind myself of that because when I exercise, for example, when my brain starts like getting tired, or like I've done 3, 4 podcasts in a day kind of thing, and my brain starts being like, okay, you're tired, you can rest, and I go, we got more in us, man, we got more in here. And it's true, you can push through that wall in your brain. You can push through that. There is more you can do. When your brain wants to give out, he's got the rule that you've used 40% of your power. You've got a lot left. And I can't say anything more other than that's very true. So I will say this, man, if grief is getting you really bad, pick up that book, man. I swear it'll change your life. But I'm gonna say it to all you guys, stay hard. And I mean it, stay hard.
I
Don't
love
let that
that.
grief, don't let your grief bite you. Stay hard.
That 40% rule is so powerful because your brain quits way before your body does. And so even
Yeah.
if you're stuck in that spot where your mind has tapped out, your body has more to offer. And sometimes it takes us getting into that very physical state and working. That's why working out is so helpful for so many people going through grief. It was instrumental in going through mine too. So that's powerful stuff. I wish that more people would just give it a shot for 30 days, consistently 30 days.
Yeah, it's a big change. I mean, my other quote I'll give that's a little softer than that, but it's a powerful one, is Tony Robbins has a beautiful quote: "Change your life, or life will change for you." Now, that one rocked my world about 5 years ago, and I'm only sharing that not to talk long-winded, but I just want to share really quickly. Life will change for you if you don't change. It will change on its own dime, and so I want to empower you and encourage you. 1% a day, start changing your life the way you want to, and build your own life. That's what I want to leave you guys with.
I love them both. No, I love them both. My next question for you is, what's a fun fact about you that maybe your clients or our audience doesn't know about you outside of coaching as we're winding down? Just a fun fact about Chris.
So a fun fact about me, I fell in love with Bob Ross last year. Just an awesome guy. And long story short, I like to paint outside of coaching because it's very relaxing. But yeah, Bob Ross has lots of wonderful quotes in his painting show. I'll say that. So if you guys are like me, want something relaxing and want a break from grief or a break from anything else going on, turn on some Bob Ross. You'll love the show. His little quote. He likes to clean his brush every time, and I always get a kick out of it because he says, "Beat the devil out of it." Always beating his brush.
And let's see if we can get David Goggins for the trifecta.
Right.
My the final question is, uh, if there was one person you could sit down and have a beer and conversation with, who would it be?
I'm gonna level with you guys. The guy that I really want to sit down with and actually talk to is Bob Ross because this guy like raised like wild animals like squirrels and wolves and birds. I mean, he was like a nature guy. Loved to rescue animals all the time. And the amount of life advice this guy gave through the show was like instrumental. I mean, I literally was captivated watching a painting show. But one of the things why I want to sit down and talk to him about life is that throughout his painting show, and this is relevant to our podcast, he'll always say things like, "Don't worry about where this is right now. Just paint, just go, and just do." And he always says too, by the way, he said on one of his episodes, he said, "I got a letter from some guy that I don't put chimneys on my cabin." And he said, I have a word for that person. He said, "This is your world. Paint it how you want to make it." And so he said, if you want a chimney on your cabin, put a chimney on there. If you want three trees, paint three. If you want five or none, do both. They said, this is your world. Make it how you see it. And so I've wanted to sit down with that guy, even though he's passed away. I'd love to sit down and have a beer with him because his outlook on life is truly inspiring.
Yeah. No, so true. And you're like, are we talking about paint or is this counseling?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if we're painting anymore or if you're healing my inner trauma. Maybe both.
He's just a crazy guy. He'd always talk about, he brought up in many shows. One time he painted with a squirrel in his pocket. Like he was just taking a nap while he's painting. And he always would make jokes about things and say, if I had a hard day at work and things just didn't go very well, I'd come home and paint. And he said I wouldn't really have an idea what I want to paint, but I would just start painting things. And I would paint a mountain or I'd paint a cabin or I'd paint a beach scene, whatever it is. But I'd find relaxing things through it. And it taught me how to find calm and center and he said, like I said, this is your world. Create it how you want. He said, nobody controls my painting. Nobody controls how I paint, what colors I make. Nobody controls that except for me. And so he said, I want to encourage you guys, create your own world. And I took that into coaching in the sense of, when we go through grief, it's the same thing. Grief is a very personal journey. It's only ours, it's nobody else's. And so why not make that our world? Why not make it something beautiful, just like Bob does for paintings?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, if anybody would love to get a hold of you or follow you, how can they reach you?
If you guys want to get a hold of me, you guys can visit my website, empoweredgriefjourney.com. You guys will find all sorts of information about me and my podcast and my coaching offerings that I have on there. I'm very active on Facebook, so you guys can find me at my handle is at the Chris Mamone on Facebook. I also have profiles on Instagram and LinkedIn and TikTok, so you guys can find me over there. I'm very, very active on Facebook, though. Most of my people are there. So we have lots of good conversations about grief and lots of fun too. You guys will see some rabbit videos with my pet rabbits. Everybody seems to love them. So if you're looking for a great place to take a brief break from grief and have a little fun, come join me.
Awesome. So I just want to thank you for being our guest today. I know for me and Sydney, it's been a pleasure to get to know you a little deeper, get to share your story, and I definitely look forward to collabing with you multiple times and you really being an intricate part because like Sydney said, like we're definitely, same kind of wavelength and your intentionality to things is just really awesome. So remember, when we take the time to hear someone's story, it gives us the opportunity to find common ground. Thank you again, Chris, for being our guest today. For Sydney and myself, it has been our pleasure being your host, and you have been listening to the Common Ground Podcast. Thank you and good night.
And that's it for today's episode of the Common Ground Podcast. We hope you're leaving with a little more perspective, a little more purpose, and a whole lot more inspiration.
So thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it. Thank you to our special guest.
If today's conversation moved you, encouraged you, or challenged you in any way, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, rate it, leave us a review. Your support helps us reach more people who need to find their own common ground.
So for John Fletcher and Sydney Curtin,
we'll see you right here next week, same time, same place on the Common Ground Podcast. Make it a great week.